Yeah, we're live now.
Good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year, and welcome to the first Cabinet meeting of 2021. Due to government guidance on social distancing, members of the press and public will not be able to attend this meeting. The meeting will be available to watch live at www.thurrock.gov.uk/webcast. The meeting is being held remotely with officers in the chamber to control the electronics, and all members are at their home joining us via Teams. The normal rules will apply. If you need to speak, please raise your hand electronically and I will bring you in the order that they appear. So moving on to the agenda. So item 1, apologies for absence. I don't have any apologies for absence this evening. Moving on to item 2, which is the minutes of the correct record of the minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on the 9th of December, which is page 5 to 18. Have any members got any statements to make in relation to the minutes at all? I'm seeing no raised hands, so I shall take that as no. In that case, can I take the minutes to be approved? I'm getting nods and thumbs up. Thank you very much. They'll be approved. Lucy, I shall sign them electronically at the end of the meeting. Items of urgent business, which is item 3. I've received no urgent items of business that I've accepted. Moving on to item 4, which is declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest in relation to any of the items that are being discussed and agreed this evening? Again, I'm seeing no raised hands, so I should take that as read. So moving on to item 5, which is my speech. As said, welcome everybody to the first Cabinet meeting of 2021, and Happy New Year to all of you that I've not spoken to already, and indeed the residents of Thurrock. As we know, since our last Cabinet meeting, the COVID pandemic has led to yet another lockdown. So it's just over a week that the country went into that full lockdown, and now we enter what is another precarious and critical stage of the national coronavirus pandemic, which we've all been living with since last March. The number of people testing positive locally makes for grim reading and clearly shows that how much more readily the new variant of this virus spreads. It's no exaggeration to say that Thurrock has been at the epicenter of a hugely increased rate of infection from this strain. And this is a strain that's somewhere between 58 and 70% more transmissible than the original strain. And we can see the huge increase in infections that it has caused. NHS and other critical care workers are doing an amazing job under the difficult and stressful circumstances, but a major incident has been declared by for Essex by the NHS, as we're reaching the point where our hospitals might not be able to cope with the number of COVID patients they are dealing with without additional help. It's now up to all of us to play our part and make sure that we're doing all we can. Simply put, we should all stay at home unless absolutely necessary to go out. Practice hands, face, space at all times. So if you do have to go out for essential shopping, wear your face covering where you're required to do so, and if you're able to. And always remember to use hand sanitizer or wash your hands regularly and maintain that social distance. Coronavirus does not recognise clever loopholes, so please not go looking ways round the rules. It's really important that we obey the words and the spirit of the rules that have been put there and show caution and care in everything that we do. It's only by doing this we can protect ourselves, our loved ones and each other from the possible terrible consequences of this virus. I'd also like to remind parents that these rules apply to children and young people as well, and not just to adults. While schools are closed, it's vital that young people stay at home lest they have to go out, and that parents make sure they're not flouting the rules by going out and recklessly meeting friends. Simply put, act as you and your family have the virus and you do not want to spread it across your community. Unless we all follow the guidance and obey the rules, then we'll remain at exceptionally high risk of this new fast-spreading variant of the virus, which is so prevalent in Thurrock and right across the southeast and indeed now the country. Instead of giving the clean it, cut it, fill it update as I would normally do, I'm going to change it for this cabinet and outline how serious this really is. The rate per 100,000 of positive tests in Thurrock is this week at 1,324. The only good news there is down from 1,514. We're now ranked 5th in the country, which is down from 2, which again is better for Thurrock. The number of people over 60 testing positive is 399, again down from 299, down from 313 as of last week. Now, it may appear that these numbers are improving as we go down the national rankings and indeed decrease in the amount of positive tests. But what we're actually seeing is there an increase elsewhere, whilst Thurrock is currently plateauing. Now, we can't take this as a sign that we can carry on regardless. We still need to practice a hands-face space at all times. And as I said, act as if you've got the virus and you don't want to spread it to the rest of your community. Now, as you would have seen yesterday, the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, and Martin Hewitt, who's the chair of the National Police Chiefs Council, made clear that the police will now act more quickly to move to enforcement action against those who refuse to follow advice and persist in breaking the laws around COVID-19 and the requirement to remain at home unless it's essential to go out. Essex Police have been doing a fantastic job. They're out patrolling our streets and the public places, and will take action to ensure that people follow the rules. Just this weekend, officers attended Butts Lane area, Stamford Hope, and issued fines for reckless motorcycle riders at the Maple Park estate. And I would like to reassure Cabinet colleagues and residents that just today, I've been assured again by Essex Police that their officers are routinely patrolling our open spaces and public areas of the borough to ensure understanding and compliance with the relevant COVID legislation and restrictions. This is a focus across all frontline teams, inclusive of dedicated additional resources specifically for the investigation of apparent breaches of COVID-19 legislation by individuals or residential addresses where they're reported to Essex Police. Their patrol activity is informed, as always, by enhanced interaction with the local community and residents. In order to ensure that their patrols, their visible patrols, know exactly where to direct their resources, I would ask that all residents, if they are going to report potential COVID breaches or antisocial behaviour, to do so direct to Essex Police, either via online or via the Essex Police site, Essex Police website, or indeed on the 101 line. And whilst we all know that there are delays using the 101, if this is going to help save lives and stop the spread of the virus in the community, please hold on and pass that information direct to the police. And whilst on the matter of a fantastic local police force, I would just remind Cabinet members and indeed residents that the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner is holding a public online meeting on Tuesday the 19th of January, and you can join that and take part through Facebook at PFCC Essex. As I say, that's on Facebook. I will be joining the PFCC as well for questions in relation to the aspects of antisocial behaviour that we cover at Thurrock Council. Excuse me. The council is, of course, working tirelessly to make sure that local businesses get the support they need and have the access to vital financial lifelines which have been made available to them by the government. Over the course of the pandemic, we've seen more than £26 million in grants from central government and support, and all this support has found its way to local businesses. In fact, since 2nd December 2020, over 2.6 million in one-off payments have been distributed to over 260 local businesses. These payments have been part of the one-off top-up grant scheme announced by the government on the 5th of January and local restriction support payments, which have also been available since the 2nd of December last year. The council has also devised schemes specifically to help businesses which may have fallen through the cracks of the national scheme, but there still needs a helping hand and it needs a bit of time to settle in. But small businesses which have run from home or rented halls or other businesses have nevertheless been affected by these measures, and more than £1 million has been given to these small but vital businesses to help them through this difficult stage of the lockdown. We are committed to supporting our local economy and making sure that businesses get the funding that they're eligible for. If any local business owner thinks they're eligible, I would urge them to look at the business section on the Thurrock Council website and make sure that they apply online to get the funding that they need and deserve. Help and support is also available for residents. More information on the full range of support for individuals can be found on the .gov UK website under Universal Credit and Other Benefits. People who are employed or self-employed on low income may be able to claim a one-off test and trace support payment if they need to self-isolate. More information on that again can be found at the council's website. Moving on to free school meals. As we know, over Christmas school holidays, we made sure that all children in Thurrock who receive free school meals continue to get one. Thanks to the government's winter support grant scheme, we provided a total of £186,000 into support for eligible children and young people through free school meals to ensure that they didn't go hungry. In all, we issued just over 11,000 £15 vouchers over the Christmas break, and we will also be covering the cost for February half term, should this not be covered by future grant by central government. Since the schools have restarted school, they've taken back the responsibility for making sure their young children who do need free school meals get them, and they have access to a meal through the voucher or food parcel. Of the 46 schools that responded to the DFE data yesterday, we know that 25 are issuing vouchers under the national scheme, 6 have arranged their own voucher scheme, and 15 are distributing food parcels. None of the food parcels from Thurrock are sourced from the companies mentioned in the recent national coverage. Moving on to bin collections. Unfortunately, as with every other part of the council, our bin collection crews are under incredible strain at the moment. The increased rate of corona infections locally and the need for people to self-isolate or to remain at home as they're clinically extremely vulnerable means that they can be short-staffed, while at the same time we've seen a significant increase in the amount of household waste and recycling generated as we all have to stay at home. I would ask residents to please bear with us and report online if your bin is missed as a collection, and get a response, and you'll be told what to do and when action will be taken to pick up your bin. If the entire road is missed, then the crews will come back as soon as possible. If you do not get a response or action is not taken by the time your next waste collection takes place, please report the issue direct to your councillors, who will then report it direct to Councillor Watkins and indeed those in charge of the waste and recycling collections. I would urge all residents to park considerately and make sure they leave enough room for a bin lorry to get down the road. Many of the missed collections are because of access of blocks due to inconsiderate parking, even if it's temporary, where there's someone parking to do a delivery. Also, keep in mind that the need for waste crews to socially distance means that crews are starting earlier than usual, with rounds beginning at about 5 AM, which is important to that people make sure their bins are ready for collection by that time. Moving on to the welcome news, the Tilbury Town Fund is actively seeking new and exciting ways to provide local facilities to young people. Both Tilbury and Grays were included in the government's Town Fund programme, and the council officers are working with a dedicated Town Fund boards to scope out projects to transformational investments for both towns in the coming years. And thanks to this funding, the Tilbury Town Fund Board is submitting a bid to government requesting funding for additional youth provision in the area. This is the first step in the details that are needed to be provided, but I'll be honest with you, having seen what's being put forward, it is an excellent example of how these town boards are working, and definitely one to watch. To hear that 93% of residents who responded to the call in Tilbury as to what they feel that Tilbury needed, 93% of them said a new youth provision. Seeing the youth provision presentation on Monday, I was absolutely blown away by what's being proposed. So I cannot wait for this to come forward and for more details to be made available so everyone can see what hopefully this positive impact it will have on the youth and young people in the Tilbury area. So with that, and thank you for my indulgence, are there any briefings on policy, budget or other issues that are not covered in the agenda this evening?
I've got one very quickly.
Yeah,
just very quickly. So obviously members and residents would have seen, due to staff shortages lately, again related to COVID, we did unfortunately have to close a household waste and recycling centre over the previous 2 days. I can confirm that will be back open from tomorrow, as we continue to obviously very much monitor the situation and very much ask residents to bear with us. We may need to make snap decisions that day or the night before, and we will give as much warning as we can do in relation to any changes to the site that need to be made. But obviously we will endeavour to get the site, if it ever does close again, reopened as soon as we can. I won't touch on the comments you've raised in relation to waste, other than obviously again asking residents to bear with us during this incredibly difficult time, and also to report it if a collection has been missed. I just wanted to quickly touch on the garden waste. Obviously, it was a very difficult decision for us to suspend the garden waste collections, but it was felt the right decision to do in order to protect our refuse and recycling streams over this particular period of time. Obviously, we are monitoring this on a daily basis, and we'll do endeavour to get the service back up to where obviously getting garden waste collections back in as soon as we safely can do so. But obviously, just asking residents to bear with us. And then just in relation to the Report It and the waste service, whilst I won't give away too many details in particular here, but I can say to residents and to cabinet members and members alike, but both in my annual report, which will be presented in 2 weeks' time, and over the coming weeks, we will be making changes to the Report It system to improve it based on the feedback we have received in order to ensure that we have a much better, smoother Report It service for residents across the borough when they tell us where we have missed their bins. That's it, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. I know from my residents who have been in contact recently over missed bin collections and indeed from across the borough. They feel that sometimes that the call is shut before the answer is completely given. So I'm really glad to hear that we're working on that to make sure that it's tracked from start of the problem to the end of it. Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Leader. I just thought colleagues would, in light of certain headlines today, would like just a brief update on the free school meal issue, just to reassure Cabinet that over the Christmas period, thanks to the government's winter COVID programme, we were able to get nearly over 6,000 children were provided with vouchers, so had free school meals during the two weeks of the holidays. It doesn't end there. There were sufficient funds that the government gave us, so we'll be helping in the next holiday. We're also able to help some vulnerable families who aren't necessarily entitled to free school meals, and there's help there. And just one thing on the packed lunch thing that came out today on the media. In Thurrock, where we use packed lunches, it's done by our caterers, and I have had assurances today. Couldn't unfortunately get a photograph for Cabinet to see it, but we actually send out packed lunches that are nutritious, are value for money, and provide food for children for the week that they would expect. And there's no bottled water in there.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. That's a really good reassurance on that. Councillor Cockshaw.
Yes, I just want to reiterate your Tilbury item. It's 93% of people wanted a youth provision. I sit on the board, and it's a fantastic that Tilbury board have come up with this idea, and I'm hoping what you've said tonight, the Cabinet can reinforce that. And I thank you for your good words, Leader. We will now want to move forward really, and as we come into the bidding process and we build a business case, it's good that we actually listen to people. Too many times Tilbury's had these things said that's going to happen. I'm hoping that we can start the construction of this with a successful bid and try and open it before 2024 2025, which will be fantastic. They can actually see something built in the middle of the heart of the Tilbury, a youth provision that's with Onside. Hopefully there's our partners there running this, so it's permanently there with 30 members of staff there all week with good meals at the end of the day, offered there at a very reasonable price, and they're very cheap for actually move forward. I think it's only a good news for Tilbury. And just to update you on the Grays bid, well, we'll be moving forward, and hopefully there's some good news on the Grays bids as well. Not just youth provision, but hopefully getting there. The two jetties in Grays and Tilbury, if we can get them built as well, and a great new high street, and with the council offices moving forward, the Grays South would look transformationally different in 3 years' time.
Thank you, Councillor Cockshaw. As I said, he was on the same meeting with me on Monday, and indeed, obviously, we sat on the board, the Tilbury board from its inception. It really is. It was an absolute game changer for me. It really was. I was just so blown away by what could be this provision, by the providers. It's just, as a former Tilbury resident as well, this is going to be a real game changer for any young person and young adult in Tilbury as they go forward. Lots of opportunities for training, lots of opportunities for, as you say, even a cheaper meal at the end of the day. That really was the icing on the cake for me. That's someone that actually thought the whole process from start to finish through, and it's absolutely great to see, and I can't wait for that to happen. So again, thank you for that. Moving on to item 7, which is petitions submitted by members of the public. Lucy, we don't have any any petitions submitted?
No, none submitted.
Thank you. And equally, no questions from non-executive members?
No, none submitted either.
Thank you. Matters referred to Cabinet for consideration by Overview and Scrutiny Committee. None at all, Lucy?
No, none today.
No, obviously after our last meeting, I'm beginning to hope we will see regular items under that particular section of the agenda as we move forward. So in that case, we will move on to item 10, which is the draft general fund budget and medium-term financial strategy, which can be found for those online between pages 19 and 32. And I shall pass over to Councillor Hebb.
Thank you, Leader. Can everyone hear me? Brilliant. For those of us who have been about for a few years, I think anyone reading this paper might feel like we've rewound a few years. In May 2016, when the Conservative Party in Thurrock assumed a minority administration from Labour, the council had a peacetime deficit of over £30 million forecast over the life of that forward 3 years. A programme of immediate budget reductions was clearly inevitable. And what was clear was that to balance the books, sudden, abrupt and poorly considered service reductions would be needed to be presented a balanced budget. But that scale of that peacetime deficit was so large that the council sought to be creative and adopt a sense of entrepreneurialism that the government of the day advocated local authorities do to become more self-sufficient. Indeed, a programme had already started. Investments in CCLA and solar had been facilitated ahead of the change of political administration, and members elected after 2017 would only ever remember balanced budgets for the forthcoming few years. They won't remember each budget round getting us through the next 12 months. With the investment approach that was built with the three-party leadership of the day come a certainty of funding, which meant that there would be elected members who would see whole electoral cycles without the need to balance a budget over the medium term, and that children born in May 2016 wouldn't see a council with a non-balanced council until halfway through their early years education. Reserves were progressively increased for a rainy day, first by nearly 40% and now treble the levels we inherited. Service reform began at a considered pace. Children's centres were looked at as an example. The benefit of a more structured and considered approach meant that rather than just shutting centres, the ethic of fewer buildings and better services was pioneered, which has led to a reduction of where the services can be used, but an increase of uptake from 70 to circa 95%. As budget surpluses meant we could invest in one-offs to support technology to assist our environmental recovery, of cleaning Thurrock up, and we were able to fund police to make our streets safer, work with schools to help provide budget stimulus and mental health provision, invest in our children's social care department, which led to a good Ofsted rating, which was an increase from the needs improvement that we inherited. All things that have improved the lives of people in our borough. In February 2020, the budget for the then future looked little different, but it will come as a surprise to no one that come March and April last year, there were loads of us prophesying a different world very quickly and a return to year-by-year budget setting. No one had predicted a world less than a month after February's budget setting, where markets were shutting down overnight in a lockdown, leading to a loss of income for retailers, less money being spent in the economy in theatres, bowling alleys, where long-planned weddings and registry office ceremonies were cancelled, service demand exponentially increasing overnight in our health and social care sectors, whilst deferrals to other services climbed and climbed, leading to essential provision being insecure in income, people being moved out of care homes into family homes in a world which was embracing working from home, but leaving care provision financially difficult, an increase of benefit claimants and homelessness needs increasing. Many of us remember discussions about when theatres, etc., would reopen. We were talking about the summer. Lockdowns at the time felt like a short, sharp thing at first, not the enduring stop-start entities that we've all become very used to now. In economic downturns, it is of course usual for everyone to reevaluate spending. This council has reevaluated its projects and removed or deferred up to £19 million worth of projects that it was intending to do over the next few years, just last year. People are also less likely to be liquid with any spare cash at the moment. This council has helped other authorities earn as a result of our financial approach over the years, but no one could blame councils for re-evaluating. They would need to be intensely confident of the return. Many councils who procured and invested in commercial investments and assets have found that COVID has put pain to their approaches. The loss of income from rents and offices called by working from home and so forth, leisure centres from social distancing, has obvious knock-on effects. Thurrock's specific approach, investing in green-minded bonds which fund energy production run by others, has helped make the country greener and has been more resilient to COVID-caused fluctuations. To the point that less than a low-ended single-digit percentage of what we've invested in has so far been impacted 10 months after the crisis began. Overall income has remained servicing any borrowing and paying out multi-million pounds worth of interest, which would have otherwise led to faster service reductions. But as we know, Thurrock is no longer a council which has a combined membership which votes for such an approach, like it did for 3 years consecutively since 2017, and no longer is it a council where members instructed officers to increase investments to reduce council tax like it did in 2018. And whilst Thurrock hasn't increased taxes by 31%, like the London Mayor next door has done since 2016, quite publicly and for all to see, Thurrock members no longer show political unity that has been enjoyed for 3 years and saw a period of budget stability previously unseen. And I go back to my point earlier. If councils see Thurrock not being confident in itself, then indeed, why would they make a decision to invest in Thurrock? And indeed, some haven't. The investment approach has been paused for that reason. And whilst the arrangements for making that so will be facilitated over the next couple of months, this budget paper presents the pressures in an MTFS which shows both one, a once in a 100-year event and the associated direct and impact consequences, and two, a reversal of anticipated income from new investments and also not replacing maturing investment bonds over the life of the MTFS. Someone was once asked about what was Plan B when it comes to investments. Well, Plan B was the original Plan A, to do what we would have otherwise had to have done back in 2016, to make reductions faster than planned. I made the point months ago, ONS, that markets are volatile and actions have consequences. Well, here we are. But what I can do tonight is confirm that this means that the council will now be seeking to reduce its approved borrowing level forecast over the next couple of years by over £350 million. And as investment bonds mature, they will not be replaced. Therefore, at a point of time in the future, past current modelling, approved borrowing levels will be adjusted accordingly, whilst also accounting for infrastructure projects critical to the borough's recovery. The government has supported working people, small businesses and public bodies in a way inconceivable during this crisis. The job retention scheme has seen 10 million people furloughed and not made redundant. It has paid out over £11.5 billion of grants to businesses, and it has funded homelessness support for local councils. That has meant that people wake up knowing that they have some degree of security in the short term. And councils have also been provided with short-term support. The council has been granted over £10 million to help close some of the gaps caused. And there are medium-term considerations that we need to have in our mind. Furlough has the indirect consequence of helping people save their homes and still pay their bills. However, at some point, furlough will end. And what the market looks like after that period and what people's habits will be like after 12 to 18 months of social distancing may well determine if everybody has work to return to which is secure, which is utterly heartbreaking for working families. It could also lead to, therefore, business rate income dropping and an inability to pay council tax, which affects the ability of a council, of course, to fund key and essential services for our vulnerable people. Local council tax collection fund deficits are presented in the next year's accounts and accrual as such. So whilst LCTS claimants haven't increased as much as we would have originally anticipated, it is likely to be only a matter of time, which means lost tax income presents as a pressure at forthcoming years in budget setting, i.e. not this year, but next. That provision has to be accounted for. And whilst government announced some accounting treatment to assist last year, it defers the problem, but it doesn't fix the problem. There are a delayed suite of children's social care referrals and an increase in elder care services delayed, which also needs accounting for. Funding has been provided which enables us to stimulate the care home market, but a spike in delayed referrals will lead to increases of budget pressures in social services. I mentioned theatres earlier. a good deal has been covered by government funding in regards to fees and charges, but that is currently boxed into time in the budget and only for the first 3 months of the new municipal year. The government, like a caring parent or grandparent, has provided some help for the kids to get them through the immediate period of time during a financial crisis, which is what is happening out there in the real world. The kids in this instance being the council. The government have helped us pay most of the bills to get us through the month or the period, but the problem is still there. The need to spend on bills and services is still there and growing, and parents and grandparents won't be able to support indefinitely. So we have a choice. We need to fix tomorrow or put off tomorrow's problems. And like I said months ago, there are questions everyone is asking at home, and the council is asking similar questions. What savings do we have? How can we reduce the income gap through other earning activity or work? Are there projects that we were going to do this year or next that we now need to do simply another day? Are there a few one-off things that we can do to help get us by? And what spending commitments do we have that we can no longer sustain if this carries on? The headspace that we once had is now not at the fingertips that it once was. And so quite simply, service reviews must accelerate. The Cabinet are asked tonight to consider that the Council accepts what the Government has articulated in the Spending Review 2020, namely a 3% adult social care precept for stimulus in the social care market and a 1.99% council tax increase. This means that for over 70% of the borough, that means an uplift of just over £1 a week. For the highest bands, that equates to £2 a week. And most of that increase, or a lot of that increase, will be used to support funding our social care services. Services we know need that vital of injection support now and for the future. And our reserves will be part used, but will remain for now largely intact. The collective challenge we must confront and overcome is large. Councils across the country are struggling and having similar discussions. And having come from a household where £1 more was a large burden, I want to stress to residents that help and support is available. The local council tax support scheme is there for those in the most need. And we are continuing to budget over £8 million to support you. We want to maintain that going into the next year. The council also remains slower in any recovery action than it was pre-pandemic. Please reach out if you are in crisis or you can see yourself heading in that direction. £30 million deficits are not, as I've already made clear, not new news to a council like this. Last time the council, a minority council in no overall control, pulled together and staved off the challenge. Residents reward leadership across any part of any political spectrum during a crisis, and if politics is put aside. And there is every reason why 2021 can be that again. The administration stands ready to see this borough through this crisis, with or without support. To all of us, this roadmap to recovery will be difficult, but we can make it easier to navigate by pulling together, emerging stronger if we tackle the common struggle as one borough together. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Hebb. Something I should have made clear is, as we know, we've got the reconvened full council immediately after Cabinet this evening, hence the early starts, and we do need to be finished by about 7:15. So has any member got anything to add or questions? Councillor Howden.
Thank you, Leader. Obviously, it's a budget during the middle of a crisis, both in terms of health and the economy. And that's why I think it makes it so sad, these crocodile tears that we're seeing from the Labour opposition at the moment, especially in regards to the council tax increase and the adult social care precept increase. You know, let's be quite clear. Labour's last budget, they whacked up everything they could by the absolute maximum. They still left us with a £30 million black hole, and they didn't have COVID to deal with. You have to actually stop and think, what on earth would that lot have done if they were still in charge today? It's quite a frightening prospect. Now, I'm proud that throughout this administration, half the budgets that we have delivered have either levied far less than the maximum or have in fact frozen tax, and that is with generating surpluses. That's something the previous administration never was able to do. Now, we've got an unprecedented crisis, so our approach now needs to alter. The increase does amount to about £1 a week, but it means that we can continue to support the most vulnerable in our society. We've got more people come into care earlier, come into care with more complex needs because of health breakdown, health breakdown of their informal care network, and because of economic breakdown. Learning disability placements by themselves have gone up by well over £1 million just in the last 11 months. This is a real problem. And the idea that Labour would carp from the sidelines about £1 a week extra for the average resident in the borough when we have extreme needs presenting for some of the most vulnerable really is pretty disgusting. I know what the opposition would say. They want the government to fund it. Well, first of all, the government have already given local government a small fortune to help us through this crisis. But more to the point, it's still taxpayer money. It doesn't matter if it comes out of the national pot or the local pot. It's taxpayer money. So rather than quibbling over, is it a national levy or a local levy, I think the opposition should really just get behind us and let us get on with the job of protecting the most vulnerable and just abandon what appears to be their approach, which is, you know, headlines at any cost and don't particularly mind about the service. Now, I am proud of what we're putting forward in the budget. We have to support the care market. The care market is stressed and morale is low because the pressure of COVID has been exhausting, and other councils are looking at financial incentives for their care markets. We can't allow other boroughs or other professions to become more attractive to our care workers than supporting the vulnerable in Thurrock. We can't always prevent people from coming into care, but we have to do more to make sure that people stay in the care profession. And we are. This budget increases what we're paying to domiciliary care providers on top of the increase that we've already provided. This budget starts the process of increasing what we're paying to home care providers on top of resilience payments. This budget maintains social care reserves that we put in place for the first time ever to give us some stability. And this budget also takes foster carers out of council tax. Fundamentally, I think for the sake of £1 a week, it's a budget that says that if you're in care or you're working in care, that this administration is backing you. And it's the type of budget that I well and truly hope the opposition behave in a less churlish manner and do support come the budget setting next month.
Thank you, Councillor Holden. As I say, I'm a bit conscious of time. We're sort of coming up to the sort of 50 minutes we've left and several items to come forward with. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, leader. I'll keep it as quick as I can, but I really have to say it. Whilst Councillor Head was speaking, my mind drifted back to sort of 2010 and Labour's last administration when, quite frankly, financial reports were just full of smoke and mirrors. I've listened to a report here tonight. It was precise, easy to understand, and full of trustworthiness and truthfulness. I think I have to say I'm very proud of what we've put forward in the budget. It's something that we should all be proud of. And I can't reiterate enough how refreshing it was to hear a financial report that lays it on the line and tells you exactly how it is, which is what Councillor Head did this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I'm going to, my bit before we go to the vote, actually, Councillor Howden took my exact words about crocodile tears and more sort of jumping for headlines and thinking about the impact it's going to have on residents and services to our residents. You know, it's been, as a leader, obviously up until the COVID crisis that was thrust upon us in March, to be able to go to meetings as the leader and you know, they're saying, well, what are you cutting this year? What are you cutting this year? And I said, well, actually, no, we're not. We're doing a phased approach. Our directors have got sufficient cash to be able to make those adjustments to services in a slower, more organised manner. So it's not just as used to happen, like 5% salami slice off here, 10% salami slice off there. And it was a real good managed approach. And then obviously we get into the crisis. We're busy managing that crisis. We are getting fantastic returns on our investments. I think it's £32 million so far. And then boom, a couple of headlines, a couple of people grabbing those headlines. And then suddenly we're having to cut back on what we are doing, not just because of other local authorities in a COVID situation, but also those that have become jittery because of those headlines. So quite frankly, the axe should really fall on them, certainly not on the services that are going to have to be urgently looked at to help make sure we've got a balanced budget at the end of the year. And yes, for years, Councillor Head has been saying, this is our rainy day fund. This is our rainy day fund. I don't think the COVID pandemic could be any more of a rainy day. Indeed, had it not been for that management from the time we took administration at Thurrock, we would be in much dire straits, much more like a number of other local authorities. So with that, Councillor Head, have you got anything to add, bearing in mind the time? No, thank you. In that case, and to speed up the meeting this evening, there are recommendations which can be found on the agenda. As recommendations 1.1 to 1.5. Are they all agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. So moving on from the general fund budget item 10 to item 11, which is the schools capital programme update. And there's also additional documents for those that are online, and I'll pass to Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Leader. I'll try and keep this as brief because I know that we're short of time. First thing that I'd like to point out is that in the report, obviously a hangover from when we were a member of the European Union, if you look at the recommendations, it talks about in accordance with the Council and EU procurement. Obviously, we need to now remove that from the report, so I apologise to colleagues that it's in there. Like I said, we're short of time, so I just want to highlight a couple of points on here that I think should be highlighted. The current schools capital programme 18-19, 19-20, which consisted of a number of big projects. 3 of those was Corringham Primary School, St Clair's Secondary School. Happy to report both of those are now completed. The final one, Benyon's Primary School, should be completed fairly soon. The temporary accommodation which we needed to provide for, to convert Thurrock Learning Campus building it into a temporary school on behalf. On behalf of Thameside Park, delighted to say that was completed on time with the help of local businesses as well. And I was delighted to attend the official opening of the school, and I would really recommend any cabinet member visiting that school. I think I'll keep it at that. Happy to take any questions, but recommend the report to colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. Are there any questions in relation to Councillor Jeffries' report? Councillor Coxall?
Yeah, I think this is from day one when both MPs started in 2010, there's been a sea change in our schools and our capital programme and the schools, and you cannot believe what has happened in 10 years. The quality of the change, what's happened about the education of our children has given us better opportunities to get more people in jobs, and more people working locally here, and that moves on throughout the career, and that is started by capital programmes and making an environment for a school. When I've visited schools numerous times over the last few years, the changes from what I remember when I was at school, these quality of these schools and the capital programmes is critical to that, and the new schools and the new academisation, as we have been a leader in this, across this, and took it with both hands. And I think this is a continuation of our capital programme, showing we've got an investment carrying on, and we're not just standing still. We're moving forward with a great new schools, and I'm proud of every one of our schools and what they're delivering in young adults into the business market, and it comes seamlessly into my portfolio of regeneration and planning and business improvements, and I hear over and over again from business leaders across the borough now, and we want to go forward and move forward with this, and the capital programmes are critical to that.
Thank you, Councillor Coxall, and you're quite right. And we have, I won't say poured a huge amount of money into it. We've poured at least the minimum amount of money into this that we would need to actually build up our schools, and we're going to continue to do that as long as we possibly can to improve outcomes for all of our children, irrespective of which town they live in across the borough. So again, as there's no more hands up, I'm going to move to page 34 and the recommendations at 1.1 to 1.4. Are they all agreed?
Agreed.
Excellent. Thank you. General nodding for the record. So with that, I'm going to move on to item 12, which is a housing revenue account, housing development 13 Lowen Road. I'll pass to Councillor.
Thank you, Leader. As Cabinet, we are aware that Council has already approved its process for identifying housing development site options, which is regularly updated and reported to Housing Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which strives to establish site suitability subject to agreed levels of engagement and consultation with stakeholders and the communities. I'm pleased to say that the site referred to in this report has followed that path and is seeking approval to tender a construction contract to demolish the existing property at 13 Lowen Road, which is an adapted council property that is no longer fit for purpose, and to replace it with new council homes through the housing revenue account, which will consist of 5 3-bedroom family homes with associated parking. The public consultation was carried out from 19th of October to the 16th of November 2020 and was well received. The planning application was submitted on the 30th of November 2020 with the design seeking to achieve targets for renewable and low carbon technologies by being a zero gas development. The funding of the project seeks to use capital receipts, known as the right to buy retention agreement, together with prudential borrowing, resulting in no general fund borrowing being necessary. And the dwellings will be let by the council within the HRA at affordable rents and are allocated in line with the council's allocations policy. I would recommend this project to colleagues as it is not only contributing to our affordable housing demands and targets, but it has the potential to spend right to buy receipts quickly and therefore avoiding the need to make interest payments back to the Treasury. And it continues to bring development forward at pace. This proposed development closely aligns to the Council's vision and priorities, particularly with the place theme focusing on houses, and I would therefore ask colleagues to agree with the recommendations in the report. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Any questions from any member of Cabinet? Councillor Cockshaw.
Again, this is over and over again. We started with a poor report about the worrying about the finances, but we're still showing commitments of development and improvements. And let's go back to live, work, and play, and learn. And the learn bit we just did there with investing, and we're now invested in homes. I think it was one of the most important things, really, where making someone have a home near where they work, and making sure they can afford it. And it's over and over again, you hear the Conservatives just talking about home ownership. It is a fantastic thing to aspire to, but to make sure people get on that home and a home they can afford and live in is important. And critical to that is council houses, and I call them homes all the times now. They're someone's home, and if it's owned by the council, it's a home for them. And making sure that's viable to be owned and everything. And this is a small one here, only 5, but let's hope the opposition can move forward and work with us to deliver large-scale council houses. That's what we want in the next 10 years of this thing. Large-scale council building, and make sure we're all proud of them. They're new homes, high quality, and for people who can afford to rent and get on that market to have a home of their own. And that's what we really want to see.
Thank you, Councillor Cockshaw. And indeed, whilst Councillor Johnson touched on it, the fact that these will be zero gas properties, which is obviously much better for the environment. And I think one of the things that jumps out to me, but may not jump out to others, this is maximising the use of our land, removing one property and putting in 5 homes. So that's 4 more families that will have a place to live, a place that they can afford to live, and hopefully within 20, 30 minutes of where they'll work. But Councillor Cockshaw and I come on to that on item 16. So with that, members, if there are no more questions, are we agreed with the recommendation on page 85 at 1.1? Again, I'm seeing lots of nods, no shaking of heads. So thank you, Councillor Johnson. So we shall move to item 13, which is the electric vehicle charging, and I shall pass over to Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Leader. I'm pleased to present this report, which explains the Council's ambition to create an electric vehicle charging point infrastructure and details how we propose to deliver this. I think it's widely known, Leader, that there's been a steady increase in electric vehicle sales and uses nationally as motorists opt for greener and more sustainable travel or form of travel. Here in Thurrock, however, our charging point infrastructure has not kept pace, nor made it easy for people to make the change. Unfortunately, we have just 3 charging points in the borough, all of which are some years old and have been surpassed by changes in technology. The time is therefore right to invest in and deliver a proper charging point network. The need to do this is not just so as to allow people to make a greener choice if they want to. The fact is the council's made some bold commitments around reducing our carbon footprint and improving air quality, and steps like this are imperative if we're going to deliver on that. But I think more importantly, the government's own announcement that it will ban the sale of combustion engine vehicles by 2035 is a game changer. If we're to make the transition between traditional motor vehicles and electric vehicles easier for local residents and indeed businesses, it's right that we begin the process now. Leader, the preferred option, as detailed in the report, is for a single external provider under a 10 to 15-year contract. That would, of course, be underpinned by a suite of KPIs in order that we can measure performance. And although I hope we never have to use it, there would be a suitable break clause to protect the council. At the same time, if Cabinet agreed recommendations in the report, work would begin on the formation of a policy which would shape how and where the infrastructure is developed. I'll touch briefly on funding. Again, this is detailed in 2.8 of the report, but essentially the delivery of the contract would be funded by 3 main streams. This would include a contribution from the council via our ITB grant, developer contributions, and more significantly match funding from the Office of Low Emission Vehicles at OLEV. That, of course, is subject to government approval. Before just turning to the recommendations, I would, as ever, have to pay tribute to officers in the directorate. I really do believe whenever we get quite significant reports like this, I really do think we've got some really professional officers in that directorate who you really get the sense they know what they're talking about, and they put us ahead of the game. Not every council is going to be able to bid for money under this scheme, but I think we're in good stead thanks to the work that officers have done. So just going back to the recommendations, they can be found on pages 91. I would endorse these. I would ask colleagues to endorse them. I would just like to add one recommendation, if you agree to it, at 1.5. This is obviously quite a long contract with a long life. It's 10, possibly 15 years, and it's not an insignificant amount of money that we're talking about. So I think in order to ensure some oversight on our part, I would just recommend that we add a recommendation, which is that we get a yearly update on the contract and delivery under it. It has been to Planning, Transport and Regeneration, ONS. It was well received, but there's no recommendations from them for us to consider now. So, mindful of time, Leader, I'll just go back to the recommendations and ask that we enthusiastically endorse them.
Thank you, Councillor Maney. Any statements or questions from members? I've got no hands up. I mean, residents will probably think, okay, charging points, poles in the ground, people plug their cars into them, get charged for it, and that's it. Well, having been to a number of conferences, obviously pre-pandemic, there are a number of organisations out there that are taking it one step further. There are companies out there that will also run fibre network through their 5G connectivity nodes, can run all sorts of add-ons, so you can have air quality testing, moving about the borough. You can park up on the street. So if you think of places across the borough where having a pole or running a cable from your house out to the street would be impractical and indeed dangerous. They're working on studs in the road that you can park over and recharge in the same way you've recharged an electric toothbrush. So I'm really glad to see here we're just not going with we'll just have a pole in the ground where you can plug your car into it. So seeing how we can add connectivity and all additionality to this is absolutely fantastic, and it's to be supported. And I will second your call for a yearly update to go to Planning, Transport and Regeneration over your scrutiny committee. I think that's the right thing to do, especially over such a long contract. Councillor Coxhill?
Yes, I'd just like to say it was disappointing. I'm very pleased that we've now moved forward with electric building and this paper's here today, because as Councillor Maney mentioned, businesses have jumped very quickly into this, and you go wherever you go across businesses. I've seen Ratesford have put an electric charging points for their customers, and as you come into Grays now, you notice that into Lakeside have points, and everywhere you go. So businesses have got their foot before us, and it's pleased that residents with a higher density of properties where flats and curbside parking, we do need to think about that. And it's great that it's there. It's not just delivering parking and making sure curbside is actually dealt with. And with that, we not in very few houses, or quite a large propensity of houses without the traditional garden, the driveway, and a garage in the borough. We're thinking about them residents as well to make sure that they can easily transition to electric vehicles in the next before 2035.
Thank you, Councillor Cockshaw. I know one of my residents contacted me, or maybe 2 years ago, outlining the same problem that I would experience with no front garden, and indeed most often than not, if I did drive, it would be nearly impossible to park outside my house, which I'm sure every resident would echo. They have that problem, which obviously would then discourage them from charging electric vehicles other than either on their drive or in their back garden if they've got one. So whilst this is obviously for the local authority aspects of it, I would hope that whatever technology is coming our way and whatever contractor would start to look at the bigger picture and all of Thurrock and the problems it comes up with, indeed, whether it be flat accommodation, old Victorian houses with no front gardens, and all the other problems, not just Thurrock, but everywhere we'll encounter. So I'm going to move to the recommendations on page 91 and 92 with the additional one of 1.5, which is a yearly update to be presented to Planning, Transport and Regeneration Overview and Scrutiny Committee. With that, are we all in agreement?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. I will move now to item 14, which is Thurrock Active Place Strategy. And again, I'm mindful of time. We've got about 15-20 minutes left. So I'll pass over to Councillor Watkins.
Thank you very much, Leader. I indulge me briefly, but it's not a super long speech like I normally do, so don't worry. I'm happy to be presenting the Active Place Strategy to Cabinet this evening. This has been a long time coming and something I personally have wanted to be delivered for some time now, and of course plays a crucial part of the local plan. A while ago, it was asked that we give sports clubs some love, and I think this plays a crucial way on us not only giving sports clubs love, but also build upon a sporting change across the borough which benefits us all. This has gone through both Health and Wellbeing Board and Cleaner, Greener, Safer Committee. It was passed and the comments have been reflected in this report, but the main one that came about from CGS I agree with. I want to see projects on the ground going. Around 18 months ago, I asked my team for us to kickstart this project, which initially required us, rightfully so, to go back out to consultation with the sports and community groups across the borough. Members may remember some time ago, I mentioned at council that I wanted an all-encompassing plan that was fed in through by the sports groups and community groups, and this has done just that, with one of the most extensive consultations I have seen. Sports and community groups up and down the borough have fed into this, and I thank our team and external partner on this, as it provides a comprehensive blueprint on how we can improve our sporting opportunity across the borough as the local plan develops. And I must stress this point. This is not a document about how the council will go and spend money tomorrow, as that is not the reality nor achievable. It is setting a blueprint for change over the coming years as the local plan develops and I do mean and on this bit, as external funding becomes available. We'll be closely engaging with our partners, including Sports England, to get the projects rolling as quickly as we all can, again, dependent on the funding as it becomes available. This report is very honest in where we currently are in the borough and where we can go. This plan relies on a local plan, but means as the local plan proceeds and new houses come to the table, sports will be within the heart of these plans and we can kickstart projects straight away. It gives an honest assessment on where we are, where we can need to see improvements in our public spaces, but also where there will be future demand. It gives an assessment as to where we can improve the sporting opportunity. And some areas it can be done sooner, dependent on the funding available. And we'll be working with external partners on what can be done as soon as we can. This plays into recommendation 1.4, whereby a report will be going to CGS later this year to explain what work has occurred so far and will do in the immediate future. Of course, and I'll do again, we know that this is very much an ongoing situation. COVID, obviously, pandemic will have an impact on this, and obviously that does play a part as to what we can do realistically over the course of this year. But the team are very excited and want to get stuff rolling. And importantly, as part of the feedback received from the committees, in particular Health and Wellbeing Board, I've committed to us delivering a consultation plan for each of the key projects as they go ahead. This is to ensure that not only do we have a plan of action in place in advance of any new sporting development, but goes ahead, ensuring that both the community and sports groups and friends of groups are contacted and can obviously be part of it, but we're also ensuring that the council teams have been spoken to, such as the social care team, and any new policies which come into play over the course of the years ahead that lie ahead of us are also reflected in any policy and any project which we do. This is so that we can get sports right. There's nothing I want to see less than a project which is created, it's started, it's built, and then it looks amazing, but it's never used. It's a waste of taxpayers' money, and in my opinion, it's a failure to the residents. But this is a good news story. There is a lot going on in the borough, across the borough, which we can engage with, which is covered as part of these plans. We can finally start enhancing our sports opportunity and start making a real difference across the borough.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Members, have you got anything to add? I'm looking at Councillor Coxhill, even before his hand came up. Councillor Coxhill would like to mention the play aspect of what we do in Thurrock.
This is exactly, you beat my throat to the play, but you knew. I'm just showing this tonight is been moved forward. It's a fantastic. It should be just on its own, this cabinet meeting. It's all about delivering, live, work, play, and learn. And every item here and every part of the cabinet member is playing a critical part to deliver this planning agenda for the next 20 years. And it's a shame it's been pushed forward, and we've got to speed it up for a meeting straight afterwards. But yes, this is the important part of the play strategy here. It's planning and building tens of thousands of new homes over the next 20 years cannot be achieved. We can't go on like just building homes and the Thurrock problem. And one of the councillors previously said the Thurrock shrug that you said. We've got to stop that. And this is an integral part of stopping that, because you can't just build homes without somewhere to live and play and learn. And this is the important bit of the play bit of it, and it's important, and we really need to move forward at this pace with everything else. And I hope tonight shows that it's not just about, as we go into the year of the local plan, about just building homes. These are places to live and work, and this is an important bit and play there. And that's all I really want to say. But it's a night to remember, really, of important part of the local plan moving forward.
You're absolutely spot on there, Councillor Coxhill. It's for the first cabinet meeting of 2021, after obviously a very difficult year with the pandemic, lots of our items coming forward: places to live, places to work, and indeed places to play. And obviously we'll come on to probably one of the most important items of yours, and item 16, a little bit later on. But I see Councillor Howden has his hand up. Councillor Howden.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. It's an exciting report, and I welcome what Councillor Watkins said in relation to consultation following the Health and Wellbeing Board meeting. I think what's very important is we make sure that consultation is actively pushed at certain communities. The report rightfully focuses on schools, because the fact is that the most common type of sports facility we build new are school facilities. But we need to make sure that we actively go after certain communities who have got just as much right to play in the local area. I'm talking about older communities, disabled communities. Myself and Councillor Johnson last year went to open Medina Road, the specialist autism facility for housing within Little Thurrock Rectory. It's essential that as we go through this process, we don't just tokenistically consult, we actively embed ourselves in social care and get social care to go directly to where those individuals live. As people leave Treetops, leave Beacon Hill, these are people who rightfully should expect the Thurrock community to evolve so they can play, they can enjoy the culture, the leisure and the sporting aspects of local life. But that requires real thought behind it as to how we're going to make that work. So I hope that I welcome to what you say about consultation. We need to make sure it's very, very targeted to ensure that as people leave venues like Treetops, like Beacon Hill, they do have a community that is actively considering them.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howden. I really am conscious of time, and obviously two more items to get through. This has got to be welcomed, as Councillor Watkins said. It is long overdue, and indeed, as Councillor Coxhill said, if we're going to live, work, and play in Thurrock, we need strategy to be able to land that, and this is that strategy exactly. So with that, I'm going to move to recommendation on page 102 at 1.1 to 1.4. Are all members in agreement of that? I'm not seeing any dissent. So with that, I shall mark that item passed. Now moving on to item 15, collaborative communities. And again, I'm really sorry about this, Councillor Hoolin, but we are running out of time, so if we can keep it as prompt as possible. Thank you, Councillor Hooling.
Thank you, Leader. This report is asking Cabinet to approve the draft Collaborative Communities report and make it our official way forward for the next 4 years. It's a framework of how we'll work with the community and embed a pan-council approach, focusing on 3 key areas: engagement, equality and empowering communities for a more resilient and sustainable Thurrock going forward. This report has been accepted by overview and scrutiny, and I've sat with the shadow portfolio holder to ensure the Cabinet has taken a collaborative approach. The paper outlines a pact, if you like, between council and community groups. It was compiled with community stakeholders and received input from over 150 people. Community engagement's essential component of policy development and so should underpin all council work. Often council services have worked independently of each other, which can make the experience for residents somewhat disjointed. This pan-council approach brings a lot of experience to the table, as it means, for example, assets, planning and community officers will meet together and forge joint working practices and really take a bold asset-based community development approach. Effective community engagement will help us build a more resilient borough, empowering and supporting communities and the voluntary sector. Co-design and co-production of community assets will make for more robust and sustainable decisions and resources, ensuring equality and access to all services for all and support community cohesion. I see this as an excellent way forward and would recommend Cabinet approve this report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hooling. Is there any member wish to speak on this? Obviously, as Councillor Coxhill has mentioned all the way through this meeting, live, work and play in Thurrock, absolutely fantastic. But on top of that, it's that living part. It's not just where you reside, it's about that whole community. That this is going to work towards. So it's absolutely fantastic paper, and again, Councillor Hooling, long overdue. As I say, I'm very conscious of time, and one of the most important items on tonight's agenda coming forward shortly. So on page 152, we see the one recommendation: the Cabinet approves the draft Collaborative Communities Framework as Appendix 1. Is that all agreed? Agreed, thank you. Moving on to item 16, the final item, which is the Thames, fantastic Thames Freeport bid to government, and Councillor Coxhill.
Thank you very much. And I've been speaking all night about live, work and play, but this is what this part of it is, the actual work element of it. And then I must say, Freeports have always been in Thurrock's DNA. And I'm sure you all know that Tilbury was, up until 2012, was a free port, and up until recently. And while DP World began as a single free trade area in Dubai Jebel Ali, the council has been working with both DP World and Forth Ports to push this bid forward. And now Fords have joined, so London Gateway, Port of Tilbury and Fords Dagenham Park will be at the heart of this bid, but not at the end of the bid as we go through during the life of the Freeport, I'm sure. You can see the bid will deliver live, work and play, but it would be the integral part of the work element of that post-Brexit. And the aim to support as a strong-led bid will benefit the whole borough and the surrounding areas around us as well, and our residents across Basildon and the other areas as well, and maybe the whole of the Thames Estuary area. It's important that free ports are in areas where there's low deprivation and the need to improve this. And these are post with the Tilbury bids and Tilbury Towns bids post-Brexit. This is reinvesting and where we need the love and where the Conservative government wants to deliver transformational changes. The zone will be a catalyst for commerce, creative and prosperity across the area, with an excess of maybe 20,000 direct jobs and maybe another 20,000 indirect jobs clustered around and associated, hopefully with aerospace, automotive, manufacturing and processing businesses across the Thames. It will be an investment of the private sector of £1 billion during the first 25 years of its life, with the advantage for Thurrock is a business rate retention during that period of nearly £1 billion itself, which we would then be able to, as you heard on the first instance of the issues of financing the borough here, this could be a major transformational change in the financing of the borough if we're right, get this right. But let's remember going forward, this is going to be a hard fought bid, and we're bidding against other towns across the country which have which have issues, and there's 10 port bids. There's going to be 10 free ports across the country, and 3 of them are going to be in the other parts of the union. So there's 7 available for us to actually compete against. So I really, really need tonight the community, businesses, and especially all members and the cabinet tonight to support this bid to going forward, so we can actually bang the drum for ports and the ports capital of the United Kingdom, which is Thurrock, where we live now.
Thank you, Councillor Coxall. I mean, you said it there again. Yeah, we are the ports capital of the UK, but we cannot be complacent on that and just assume that a free port will be landed on our lap just because we've got the most ports in one local authority, etc. It's just not how it works. This is a very long bidding process. As you say, this has morphed as it started. Obviously, in Thurrock, it now includes Fords at Dagenham, so it's quite a long stretch of the river that will be involved in this. As you say, even outside the local authorities, in the way that the free port isn't just a physical port; it's a zone. Some of the aspects of this, for instance, being able to import goods that would have a tariff on them, but the tariff would be less if it were assembled. So you can assemble it without paying the first tariff and just pay the second tariff, which will make it cheaper and make the UK a lot more desirable to have machinery put together, avionics put together, and pretty much everything else. Increasing the type, skills and pay level of jobs in and around Thurrock, and indeed just make us a lot more attractive to even more outside bid up over and above the £1 billion you said over the first sort of 25 years. I've been fortunate enough to be briefed on this a couple of times and been in meetings with Councillor Coxall. And this really is exciting, but the one thing we need to do, it can't just be Councillor Coxall, myself and relevant cabinet members, it can't just be members of the council, it needs to be all of us as residents of Thurrock as well, putting our weight behind this, because this is nothing but opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, not just for now, but also for our children and grandchildren, for those that have them. So I will fully support the recommendations on page 172, and now would ask any other member if they've got any questions. Complete blank. Absolutely, thank you very much. And
can I just mention that if you look at it, and the Councillor Maney's conversations about electric vehicles now with Fords changing, and Fords Dagenham and you can see the reason why Fords Dagenham is producing diesel engines and wants to transform. If it can transform to battery power and everything, and we could be one of the first countries in Europe delivering that, and if we can get the A13 and we can have automotive vehicles running up and down between these port sectors, you can see the innovation of there. If I just called a conversation with Fords earlier this week and talking about moving transit and making upscaling transits to make the white van man of Essex to make sure he can get his vehicles and actually transformed locally and been manufactured around here, and actually start getting to exports and importing and the manufacturing industries that can deliver through there. That's why I mentioned Basildon. Thinking about what the aviation and the engineering now, we can bring back manufacturing here at a heart and the heart of the Thames estuary. But it is critical. We need colleagues to actually start banging this, because Teesside, Liverpool, Dover, Felixstowe are all doing the same, and this is competitive bidding process, and we need to be all on one and retweeting and talking about this. And anyone, please let's get involved and win this bid.
Thank you, Councillor Coxall. One of the things that obviously you touched on is the fact that obviously being both Barking and Dagenham and Thurrock having areas of deprivation, the skills academies that will come along with the free pool to be able to skill people up. And this isn't, people thinking, oh, it's just going to train a load of dockers or warehouse people or whatever. It's not. It's way, way beyond that. As you say, automatic vehicles that will follow each other up and down the A13, taking parts from one place to the next. Using the Thames to be able to transport parts again and whole vehicles or whole products up and down the Thames autonomously. This is really quite fast stretching and futuristic stuff going on here. So, you know, all of those aspects are just nothing but a plus for Thurrock. So I'm going to echo what you said. You know, we all need, all those that are on social media, just a need on banging that drum for Thurrock, banging that drum for, you know, Thurrock and Thames Freeport, to get the message out wide, you know, much wider than just the circles in the council or just the circles within the Thames Freeport application area, but for everyone to understand this is a plus for Thurrock. It will be a plus for Barking and Dagenham. It will be a plus pretty much for the South Essex coastline. So, you know, it really is nothing but positives. So with that, moving to page 172, and it is a shame that we can't speak more on this because I'm sure both Councillor Coxwell and I could go on pretty much all night. It is that fantastic. I'm going to move to the recommendations 1.1 to 1.3 as outlined in the papers. Are they all agreed?
Agreed.
Again, I'm seeing no dissent, so I'm going to take that as fully agreed. So with that, members of Cabinet, as you're aware, we need to shut down 15 minutes for the chamber to be cleared and cleaned for the reconvene full council, which obviously is going to start taking place at 7:30. So with that, I'll just remind all residents and members, please, if you do have to go out to practice hands, face, space at all times, keep your reasons for going out to those that are lawfully there. Don't try and find a way to get around the rules, because COVID doesn't care if you're trying to get around the rules. You will get infected and you will infect your loved ones with terrible consequences in doing so. So with that, again, Cabinet, thank you all, and we'll see you all shortly at full council. Good evening.
Good evening, thank you.